Welcome to RotoWire Fantasy Football Live. We're here 5 days a week, 11 a.m. Eastern. You can always catch the replay on RotoWire YouTube. So glad to see everybody here today. Thanks for making me a part of your football routine. It really is an honor and a privilege to be in that situation. Your support and just showing up and hitting the like and subscribe and all those good things, it means so much to me. So thank you so much for being part of this great fantasy football community. Remember, we're off on Wednesdays and Thursdays. Yeah, man's got to take a little rest at some point in time, even during the regular season. Remember, the Sunday, the start sit show, that's the big one. No London games the next couple of weeks. We're still going to keep rolling on Sundays. Look forward to that. We went all the way till kickoff last week with questions, but definitely come in and love to see you there. All right, Monday Night Football. Cowboys and the Chargers. You know, I think the one thing I'll say is this. Penalties are penalties. If it's called, I get it. They're penalties. But we learned from Bill Belichick a long time ago in some of those Super Bowls they won that there were teams they played where they were outmatched, like with their defense was outmatched by another offense. And what they did often was they would just hold on every play defensively. They knew the referees could not blow the whistle on every play. And at some point, they just gave up. And so Belichick would get a tactical advantage by knowing referees don't want to take the game over, especially like in a Super Bowl on a huge stage. Well, last night, the penalties, again, they were penalties. And I don't care what either team. They're all the same to me. I love all 32 teams equally. But it just felt like the game was a bad watch because of all the penalties. It seemed like play after play. And it was, I mean, obviously overblowing it, but it felt like there was no flow to the game because every time there was like a big play, there was a penalty. Legal shift. I think they should call it a legal shit. That's what it sounds like when they say it. It's very funny. He threw some illegal shit. 5-yard penalty. Replay the down. I love that one. But anyway, it wasn't a fun game to watch. But that said, fantasy, Tony Pollard, fortunately for him for fantasy, it was a brutal missed tackle. I mean, the guy just like spun him into a 60-yard gain. For fantasy, Pollard at least gets you 17 PPR points. So you're happy about that. Dallas pulls off the win 20-17. We knew this would be a close game. I didn't want to make a pick on the winner of the game. I mistakenly took the over. The prop I pushed, though, was CD Lamb over 71.5 yards. That one I felt very strong about, and he did go for $117. He had 50 yards in the first quarter. He was close to cashing the prop at halftime. But I kind of knew that would be the way they would attack. But what surprised me, and I'll get back to Pollard in a moment, was that Michael Gallup gets 10 targets and was the least productive receiver per target on the team. Catches 3 for 24. Dak and he just did not seem to be like exactly on the same page with things. And I just don't understand how you're giving Michael Gallup 10 targets while CD Lamb is getting 7. That doesn't make an ounce of sense. And, you know, I get it. Teams are playing coverage on CD Lamb. He's a superstar. It doesn't matter. Get him the football. I didn't think there was bracket coverage to the point that Lamb wasn't able to shake free from it. And so, and again, when I watch the all 22, I might see it a little differently, but I don't think so. When Lamb had plenty of space, and Brandon Cooks comes alive here, which was nice. He catches all 4 targets, gets a rushing attempt. It's the first signs of life he showed all season. And I had just mentioned on a show, based on what we had seen, you could drop him. Now, at the point where I said that, fortunately, you probably couldn't drop because it's a Monday night game. But now there's enough signs of life here. Well, okay, it was something. It was 4 for 36 and a touchdown, 14 rushing yards. But it's a building point. And maybe as Dallas's coaches begin to refine things, maybe they can make Cooks a bigger part of the game plan. Jake Ferguson, one of those anomaly games. All good players have bad games. Ferguson had that slew of 7-target games, and he had a 4-target game. He gets 1. All right. It happens. Tight end position. George Kittle has less than 10 yards in 2 of the last 3 games. In between that, he has a 3-touchdown game, but we understand it's the nature of fantasy football. There's no rhyme or reason to it. It's going to hit. The bad games are going to hit. But let's get back to Tony Pollard. Overall, this is a macro issue. It's not just Pollard. Pollard's rushing numbers have not been very good the last few games. 4 weeks ago, he had that 122-yard game. I am seeing, as I'm rewatching the games over and over, I'm seeing this. The NFL defenses, despite having lighter personnel and having been constructed to stop passing games, they are finding schematically much more effective ways of stopping the run with lighter personnel. And it's across the league. Of course, players at the running back position blow up, but we're not even seeing it. Even that Falcons rushing attack. Now, the run blocking is still very good. It's not as precise as it was last year. They were just mauling people at the mesh point, and they were just blowing people off the ball. This year, they're very, very good, but their rushing attack, Tyler Algier not getting much, even Bijan. Bijan, for the superstar level back he is, and he had that 105-yard game on 14 carries a few weeks ago. But you're looking at his box scores now. He's not hitting much like near 4 yards a carry. He's not getting that 4 yards. He's barely scraping it, but he's a superstar. And if that line and the defenses were the same as last year, we'd be looking at Bijan as a 5.5 yards per carry guy. Not a knock on Bijan. No knock at all. But it's the league across the board. Austin Eckler, now, we'll get to the other side. He went 14 for 27. Now, I know he's coming back from a high ankle sprain. Yards per carry, and Dallas was out Leighton Vander Esch. I think that for fantasy, what we see going forward is that we have to be careful. The running backs are not, obviously Christian McCaffrey, when he's healthy, blows away this discussion. But most running backs are not consistently having those ceiling games. Breece Hall has been able to make things work. Of course, there are always exceptions. But across the board, teams that want to run the ball, defenses are having an answer for that. And, the league is cyclical. Things always swing. So the offenses will make adjustments, and they will find ways, different run schemes to come and counteract what the defenses are doing. It's a chess match. It's always moving, and that's why we love fantasy football. We love football because it's never easy. It's always a study. Every week is a study. All right, so Dallas gets what Dak Prescott was fine. He was fine in this game. Tossed the touchdown. He runs a real nice designed run where he faked out a defender on a 4th and 1. Very nice call there. Not mind-blowing numbers, but Dak gets it done here. So we thought he'd have a big game here, 272. Again, 40 yards rushing, though. That really ups your fantasy output. So Dak is fine. Chargers side of the ball. You know what? I think what I realize here is we have two things going on. I don't know what percentage of full effectiveness Austin Eckler was at. Maybe it was an acclimation game for him. Maybe he wasn't right in game shape yet. That's possible because he was stymied. To give him 4 catches for 35, nothing really hugely explosive there. And again, less than 2 yards per carry. They ran him near the goal line. He almost always finds a way to score, and he didn't. So, again, we have to see. Maybe that high ankle sprain, there are analysts that say often when a player comes back, he's not quite the same. Possible. Could be an acclimation game, like I said. So don't panic on Austin Eckler right now. And I would be more prone to say throw an offer out to his fantasy manager if they're freaking out a little bit. And if you don't roster him, and see if you can maybe buy him, because I do think he's going to be fine. I do think I would tend to think more coming off the layoff. That probably is more than not the case. Justin Herbert was fine. You know what? Missing Mike Williams is huge. And I think we're going to see this because Keenan Allen ends up cashing 7 for 85, 11 targets. He scores, but teams are going to bracket the heck out of him. We saw it yesterday. He's getting bracketed quite a bit. And now at that point, Quentin Johnston, 2 targets, nothing. Josh Palmer made a few nice catches, but I don't think anybody in the league is scared of Josh Palmer. So I think defenses are going to bracket Allen hard and make Herbert play hero ball. And I'm not enamored with the rest of the targets. Justin Herbert's an amazing quarterback. But if you're going to tell me if we can take out Keenan Allen, all right, Austin Eckler's a dynamic threat, but he's a running back. Okay, so we can live with that. And then it's Palmer, it's Quentin Johnston, it's Gerald Everett, and I don't think anybody's afraid of them. So I think we're going to see a very tactical approach. Now, Herbert's had success with people out before. It's not like he hasn't done that. We've seen it plenty of times. So there's that. But I do think it's going to make it more difficult for them. And Dallas, look, we give Dallas a lot of credit here. Dallas is a great defense. Didn't look like it in a couple of games, but we've seen them be completely lights out. And they were getting pressure at just the right times. And as good as the Chargers' offensive line is, if you like them a lot, Herbert was under pressure quite a bit. The Dallas deals and dials it up. So that's part of the problem too. Most teams will get far less pressure, and Herbert will be able to use his legendary arm to bail them out of a lot of situations. But it may not be the high-scoring, explosive offense we wanted this year. because Quentin Johnson doesn't look right now like there's going to be much going on as a rookie, which is going to make the Mike Williams loss hurt even more. So it just narrows their ability to punish defenses. All right. Hey, if you're enjoying the show, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button if you're on RotoWire YouTube. Bottom of the hour, Brandon Kravitz on. He'll give you a few different waiver wire options. Brandon always does a great job. Always excited to have him in. Let's talk some player trends that I've noticed through last week and the last few weeks. So Jared Goff. Now, I call when I'm doing my weekly setup, it's like home Goff or road Goff. That's the first thing I look at. Home, he's been lights out since last year, every game. He got it done on the road at Tampa. They got the two good corners, Carlton Davis, Jamel Dean. He throws for 353, a couple touchdowns. Jared Goff gets it done on the road. And, it may not be every game, but nonetheless, Goff is really thriving in Ben Johnson's offense. You can tell last year there were so many things that were schemed up, quickly open, made Goff comfortable. Goff is gaining in confidence. His confidence is growing by the week. And now he's willing to take a few more risks than he used to take, throwing into a little more tight windows than he used to throw into. This is the career arc as a maturation of Jared Goff. And I know he's been around a while, but it's clearly a maturation of him as a quarterback. And I'm excited to see what Jared Goff has going on here. So again, on the road, he did it. Maybe not every week, but I think you have to consider him, top 10 fantasy starter at this point. This offense is getting it done. Now, no David Montgomery, maybe it's coach said he's going to miss a little bit of time. That has to mean a week, right? So, and then we don't know Jahmyr Gibbs' status is, not that he's done a whole lot. Now, if you're down to Craig Reynolds, you're going to have to throw a little more than you wanted to. I think you're not going to be able to run. So Jared Goff, again, just keep rolling him out there and just be excited for the prospects he has going on. Anyway, running back, go take Alvin Kamara. I say this all the time. Volume is king in fantasy football. And he has 25 targets in 3 games. Okay, that was weighted down by a 14-target game. He had a 14, a 3, and a 7. So it's been all over the place. But nonetheless, 75 touches in his last 3 games, that kind of volume. I don't care if you're not the same running back you were 3 years ago. It was 19 for 68 last week. All right, not great, not 4 yards a carry, 22 for 80 the week prior. Again, almost 4 yards a carry, but not quite. Doesn't matter. He's getting volume. 1 touchdown in the 3 games. But when you're telling me you're catching passes, and I know the yardage hasn't been great. Now, he's not catching passes for a ton of yardage. Again, the 7 catches this week were 36 yards, 5 yards a catch, 3 for 17 the week prior, 13 for 33 in his first game. So, again, he's not producing on a per-play basis anything special. But for fantasy, dial him up in PPR all day long. Travis Etienne. Again, yards per carry for him. This is the league trend I'm talking about. The league trend is teams are defending the run better as a whole than they have in prior years. It's very evident. Etienne is one of the poster children for this. So he has 2 touchdowns in each of the last 2 games, but his rushing this week, 18 for 55. Now, Indy's a good run defense, but they aren't at the level they were last year. But yet they figured it out on Etienne. But Etienne cashes for fantasy. And remember, before the season, we said last year, Etienne didn't have more than 3 catches in a game. He has at least 4 in the majority of his games, 3 last week. So not only is he finding the end zone, but he's getting it done in the receiving game. He's right in that top 8 to 10 bucket in PPR leagues right now. Extreme volume, playing 80% of the snaps, one of the higher rates of running backs in the league. Again, we thought Jacksonville last year, they showed us, they sat him quite a bit on the bench. They gave him a lot of snaps off. They brought in Dearness Johnson. They brought in Tank Bigsby. And so the writing seemed to be on the wall that they wanted to spot him, give him some rest. Nope, not the case. Full go on Travis Etienne. Those who drafted him, big winner. Kenneth Walker also, my goodness. The touchdowns, 4 straight games, but in 2 of those multiple touchdowns, his snap share the last 2 weeks. So 3 weeks ago, was a little more than half the carries. We saw Zack making a dent in his workload, pushed him right aside. 71% last week, 76% of the snaps this week. He's getting right about 18 carries a week. Red zone work. In many games, he's getting 3 catches. So, wow. Ken Walker fell in drafts because in my initial take, it's one of those things. Man, don't dust off your initial takes. On draft weekend, NFL draft weekend, I said this. I said, all right, Pete Carroll wants to run the ball and play defense. And if Ken Walker gets hurt, all they had was DJ Dallas. They could not run the ball if Walker got hurt. I said at that time, Charbonnet is insurance. They brought him on in case Walker gets hurt, then they'll still be able to run the ball. And then as we got into July and the talk get flowing around, I got swayed. I got swayed to saying, Charbonnet is probably going to be an equal partner with Ken Walker. And not the case. Ken Walker's getting it done right now. Top 7 running back. I mean, he's fighting the end zone every week. We know with the receivers they have, defenses can never sell out to stop the run. And he is a big play threat all the time. So that's looking up for him. Again, if you're enjoying the show, please consider hitting the like and subscribe button. If you're on RotoWire YouTube, if you can consider giving me a follow on the X at Jim Coventry NFL. As the week gets on, I'll post player threads, betting threads, prop bets, and I'll always post where the videos are coming from. Also, I'll be on Sirius XM Fantasy Sports Channel 87 tonight for 15 minutes. I'll be on at 9:35 Eastern tonight. Be joining Nick Whalen and Jeff Erickson, my RotoWire teammates. Feel free to join me there as well. All right. Some wide receivers. Michael Wilson of the Cardinals. The targets haven't been great. He had the 7-target game 3 weeks ago. Otherwise, he gets about 4 targets a game. But he's been getting it done on 4 or fewer targets. 3 for 62 this week. Obviously, the 7-target game, he went for 76 and 2 tutties. 86 yards on 2 targets. And then he had a 56-yard game on 3 targets. So look, he may get more targets, but even in the low volume, you can't count on 3 targets saying you're going to get it done every week. It's just not realistic. But you have to think at some point, Arizona, what we see, it's been a very spirited team this year. We love what Arizona's done to get a competitive team out there despite being talent deficient on their roster. We're beginning to see it crack. You can only go so long before the better teams just start taking advantage of you. The Rams did it last week. The Rams just moved the ball at will. Defensively, they got enough done. It's Josh Dobbs. Josh Dobbs is a nice player. Probably a career backup. Played well, run well, very smart. But it ultimately, he has plenty of limitations as a quarterback. And the more film that gets out on him, teams game plan a little differently. Marquise Brown had been doing really well. He had a little bit of a down game. But again, if you're in a deeper league, Michael Wilson's still on the waiver wire. The targets could go up. The production to this point has been excellent on a per target basis. So take a look at Michael Wilson. Drake London, look, back to the macro point I made earlier, that the league is doing much better against the run with lighter personnel this year. Well, what we've seen is in the last 4 weeks, Drake London has had at least 6 targets in every game. And he's had some really good performances. 9 for $125 last week on 12 targets, 6 for 78 the week prior, and then way back in, I believe, week 2, 6 for 67 and a touchdown. He's not going to have a big game every week, not going to score a touchdown every week. He has 2 in the last 5. But the targets are there. Arthur Smith is a smart guy. And I think he's beginning to realize. Now, the reason they passed against Houston completely sold out to stop the run, and they just mortgaged their pass defense, and Ritter was able to beat him there. But I think what we're going to begin to see is Arthur Smith's going to realize, I can't run teams into submission like I did last year. The league is different now. They're going to have to throw more. Is Desmond Ritter a good quarterback? No. But he has proven since last year, the last 4 games, he can get the ball to Drake London and be very, very competitive. I'm going to take this question. C-Dog, welcome. Glad you're here. So you want to know if you should trade Mahomes for A.J. Brown and Jordan Love. That's a tough one. Mahomes has not had a ceiling this year. Jordan Love, here's the problem. When the Packers are in a close game or they're winning, he is throwing 30 or less passes in a game. This goes back to the Aaron Rodgers days. That's Matt LaFleur's way of doing business. Now, I know Love had multiple touchdowns in the early games despite the low passing attempts, and I know he had those 2 games before the Raiders game when they were down double-digit points and they had to chase, and he got garbage time points against Detroit and New Orleans, I believe. But look, overall, I think Jordan Love is going to be a problematic fantasy situation. If you had a more consistent quarterback than than Jordan Love, who you could start instead of Jordan Love, getting A.J. Brown, he's going to have a legendary season. Brian Johnson, the offensive coordinator, he hasn't figured a lot of things out, but he did figure out one thing. When something's not working, dial it up to A.J. Brown. I've said this on a couple of different shows, and I might have said it here yesterday, but I'll say it again. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown. They are all tied for the best receiver in the league. They all win in different ways. They're all beautiful players. They all are unstoppable when they're given the ball in the way that they can handle business. They all have versatility and can win in different ways. One of them is not better than the other. A.J. Brown is absolutely in that discussion. A.J. Brown was just a victim of not seeing targets. Even last year, Devontae Smith was seeing more targets than A.J. Brown in the second half of the season. They got to the Super Bowl. So, you can't argue it. But seriously, A.J. Brown, if he had the target share every week that Jefferson would get, that Chase would get, that Tyreek Hill would get, A.J. Brown is guy. So that trade, if you can't upgrade the quarterback from Jordan Love on the waiver wire, if Jared Goff's on the waiver wire, I doubt it, maybe. If you could waiver wire that and get a usable quarterback, I would do it. Otherwise, as great as A.J. Brown is, I can't take the drop in quarterback. A quarterback is stable points most weeks. All right, good question, C-Dog. All right, let's get back to some player trends. Brandon Kravitz joining us at the bottom of the hour. He'll throw you a few great waiver wire ads. Amari Cooper. Cooper looked amazing against the 49ers. He only had 4 targets. He caught them all. Double coverage, ball thrown up, leaps up, goes over Charvarius Ward, makes a beautiful catch, gets both feet in. Now, when he had Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he only had 1 catch for 16 yards on 6 targets. But look, he has at least 90 yards in 3 of his last 4 games. Cooper is going to sail over 1,000 yards. Assuming Deshaun Watson gets back anytime soon, Amari Cooper is a borderline top 15 wide receiver the rest of the way. He is simply a player we've seen. He doesn't have elite speed, but last year he showed he can get deep. We know he can win underneath. He's surgical. He can win in so many different ways. And I still believe that Deshaun Watson is going to continue to get him the ball as he was beginning to do. 10 and 8 targets in the last 2 games that they played together. And that he is the passing game for them. Elijah Moore, they haven't figured out how to get him in enough space to get yards after the catch. Donovan Peoples-Jones hardly gets targets. David Njoku's been okay. It's all about Cooper. If you could buy on Cooper, didn't score a touchdown last week. He had that 1 for 16. He had a bye week. I'd throw an offer out for Cooper to see if you can get him. And I see C-Dog has Cooper, so you're cooking there. All right, Garrett Wilson. Look, they've had a brutal schedule. And if you look at his PPR games, it's not what you wanted. 3 weeks ago, a 9 for 60, 15 PPR points. 2 weeks ago, 3 for 54. We didn't like that one, 7 targets. But again, that was a horrific matchup. And then 8 for 90 on 12 targets. So he's getting it done. The other 17. Again, he doesn't have the ceiling we expected with Aaron Rodgers. I fully expected Wilson to be a 1,500-yard receiver with about 12 touchdowns. He was going to be right there as a top 5 wide receiver all year long. Well, all right, Zach Wilson's in, and he's not a top 15, but you drafted him. If you drafted him, you're still getting top 18 receiver value out of him. Their schedule is going to lighten up in different weeks. He does have big game ability. So there's that. Let's take this question. Jonathan Gonzalez is in the house. Watson and Cooper for Kirk and Metcalf. So if you have a viable starting quarterback, then Watson would be your number 2 and it wouldn't matter. So you basically trade Cooper for Kirk and Metcalf. In that case, is again, assuming you have another starting quarterback, now you're getting 2 receivers for one. As much as I like Cooper, if you're going to tell me if I need 2 starters, I got Kirk and Metcalf. Yeah, you add starters to your lineup if the cost is not too prohibitive. And I don't think that cost is too prohibitive. Again, as long as Watson was your number 2 and you have a strong other starting quarterback, you make that trade, I think. I think that's the best. That's the logical trade in my mind. Good question. Josh Reynolds is next. Josh Reynolds isn't going away. Now, his targets will be between 3 and 6 most games. That's what he's going to get. But other than the game when he was coming back from a groin injury and he put a goose egg up on 77% of the snaps, again, he wasn't healthy in that game. Otherwise, we're looking at 60 yards in most games. He had a 3 for 50 last week. Decent chance to score. He is their only outside possession receiver they have. Jameson Williams, they're working in. Williams' snaps went down last week. He had a touchdown. It was like 28% of the snaps, top of my head, but it was low. It went down from the prior week. I'm telling you, Coach Campbell doesn't like him. Anyway, Josh Reynolds, he has a floor for you. And when he gets in the end zone, not a great ceiling, but a bit of a ceiling. He's a guy, if you're in a deeper league and you need a flex, yeah, I think Josh Reynolds is your guy. Will he cash every week? No, we see this. Even superstars don't cash every week. But Josh Reynolds, big part of that passing game. And like I said, if they're going to be without David Montgomery this week, they're going to have to pass a little bit more. They're going to have to lean on their outside receivers a bit more. Brian Upton's in the house. Yes, thank you for asking everyone to smash the like and subscribe button. I appreciate you greatly. Brian, DST this week. Raiders, Seahawks, Green Bay. You know what, Brian? If you post their opponents for me, I'll answer for you. I'm still at that point of the week. Monday and Tuesday, we still look back, and I'm still crunching numbers and watching film from the last week. Wednesday, I kind of turned forward. But if you go ahead and give me the opponents, I can give you a little answer on that one right away. AS, 3-3, lowest points, most scored against, sitting in 8th out of 12. Guess you need him. Yep. You will. 3. Hey, if you got 3-3 and you made it through that, you're going to be just fine. Uncle Ted's in the house. Zach Evans or Jordan Mason for 1 week. Well, I mean, honestly, I don't think Eli Mitchell's 100% because he got in the game and then Jordan Mason took over for him. I think Mitchell only had a carry or so, and then Mason came in. Zach Evans is going to have all the work. Royce Freeman's on their practice squad. So, but that said, if you're talking for waivers, I assume you're talking waivers. If they're both on your roster now, we could wait. We could wait and find out a little bit more about McCaffrey's status. If it's a waiver question, if Kyron Williams is already ruled out for 1 week, there's got to be a chance he misses 2, right? I don't know when their bye is off the top of my head. But Jordan Mason in that offense, both offenses are cooking. So right now, I would say today, McCaffrey might play. Today, I say Zach Evans because he is the starter. He's getting 15 touches in the game, and that's volume. Jordan Mason, again, McCaffrey might play. Eli Mitchell might have a bigger role. Right now, it's Evans. All right, we got a few minutes. We got Brandon Kravitz coming in here. Rashee Rice, very excited about Rashee Rice. The snap share is sporadic. He tops out around 50%. But he's getting 4 or 5 targets in each of the last 3 games. He had a 7 before that. Ultimately, I think he's gaining confidence of Mahomes. They need receivers here. Also, pointing on the same breath, Kadarius Toney snap share is going up. 6 targets each of the last 2 games. I think they're going to need those players. I think they're going to need them both, and I think they're both going to begin to step up. Brandon Kravitz, welcome in. We're getting ready for week 7. How is everything?
Pretty good. I was able to withstand most of the injury bug that plagued most of us throughout the course of the weekend. So the fact that we're all still standing is a good sign, Jim.
Oh, 100%. And before we get to waivers, I got 1 minute. I'm going to get the question from Brian. I promised we'd answer this. So defense question for this week. Raiders versus the Bears. Green Bay versus Denver. Seahawks versus Arizona. And I think you kind of repeat a little bit there. So I would likely say in this case, the Raiders right now, because I don't think we're going to see Justin Fields. He's doubtful. And I think Tyson Bagent is going to be a bit of a problem. And Max Crosby's going to cause him a lot of discomfort. Who do you like out of that one, Brandon?
I like Seattle if you wanted to hang on to them moving forward. But if you're talking about just for this week in particular, you're spot on. I mean, this backup for the Bears, I actually put together a somewhat decent stat line, but you saw with that first snap, instant turnover. This guy doesn't look like an NFL quarterback, probably would win an XFL MVP if given the opportunity. So 1 week, Raiders, rest of season, if you don't want to go back and forth on waivers. I mean, we'll talk about Seattle in a minute because I got them on my list here.
Beautiful. Now, Brandon, he's here every Tuesday. He's coming in to give you some waiver wire ideas. Brian, you're welcome. Brandon, let's go with some quarterbacks. Who are 2 that you like here?
So we're going to go short term and long term with this as well. Desmond Ridder would be the short term solution. He's put together back-to-back solid performances, and the Falcons are throwing the football. I know it's hard to believe. We certainly didn't think that was the case, ever going to be the case to start the year. 37 and 47 attempts in the last 2 games. They've got talented players to throw the ball to. So if this keeps up, he could be fantasy viable moving forward. As long as Arthur Smith doesn't have a complete meltdown with some of these bad reads and bad turnovers from Desmond Ridder, fantasy-wise, I love the production the last 2 weeks. And then the long-term appeal, a sneakier option would be Malik Willis of the Tennessee Titans. They're on bye this week, so don't pick him up if you need a starter now. But certainly in Superflex or in deeper leagues, we're talking about a guy that does have rushing upside, and we're always looking for that at the quarterback position.
Now, Brandon, earlier in the show, I was mentioning to the audience that I noticed, back to your Desmond Ridder point, a macro trend across the league. So over the last few years, defense have been getting lighter and lighter to defend the pass. But what's happened this year is defenses across the board have figured out creative ways to utilize that lighter personnel to slow the rundown. And a lot of these teams that were counting on the run, they are not having the major success. We are seeing a lot of running backs going under 4 yards per carry on a consistent basis. So the league is a constant chess game of moving pieces. And Arthur Smith, I believe, realized, remember, Tyler Algier was a 5.25 yards per carry guy last year, and he can't sniff 3. And we know he had a couple great ground games out of Bijan Robinson, but a lot of the weeks barely cracking 4 yards per carry. So I think that the realization is you have to pass because the running game doesn't have the same EPA that it had for the teams that were successful with it. So your call on Ridder is awesome because this trend is one that's going to lead him, as you mentioned, to heavy pass volume with those great targets. So I love that call. Any other words there?
I mean, that's just really good stuff, Jim. This is why we pay you the big bucks here at RotoWire. That was phenomenal. A great breakdown. And I think you're right. You're seeing creative running work better than just ground and pound. And, and putting that together and the research that you did, I think that certainly backs that up. Let's move to the running back position. I've got a few names to comb through here, so you can help me sift through this. 49ers clearly dealing with some issues at running back. We don't know what Christian McCaffrey's status is going to be. This really comes down to your personal philosophy and belief. Eli Mitchell is the presumed number 2 for the 49ers, but he only carried the ball 2 times for -3 yards when CMC went down with that injury. Jordan Mason carried the ball 5 times, scored a touchdown during his time on the field. I mean, it's not like 5 carries is like a runaway train in terms of whose backfield this is if CMC doesn't play. I think Mitchell is the better talent. My guess is that he gets the first crack if McCaffrey can't go, and perhaps Kyle Shanahan was keeping him on ice for exactly this sort of situation. And then, of course, to further complicate things, it's a Monday Night Football game, and so far the San Francisco 49ers have been pretty coy with this McCaffrey situation. So, I would say Elijah Mitchell 1, Jordan Mason 2, and you might not need either of them. The others are simple. Craig Reynolds should be the goal line and short yardage back for the Lions with David Montgomery out. Keontae Ingram was the lead back for the Arizona Cardinals, as it said he would be on the depth chart. James Conner is on the shelf, of course. Sorry for all of those who overspent on Amari DiMercato. You can probably throw him back on the wire. And then a huge tick up for Latavius Murray with the Bills and Kareem Hunt. They both saw expanded workloads, and those are guys that are in fantasy-friendly offenses. So honestly, if you wanted to, I wouldn't be upset if you took those 2 names at the end, slid them to the top of your list because they might actually offer more long-term appeal.
Brandon, what was really weird, so Keontae Ingram, as you mentioned, he gets 10 carries and 2 targets. Damian Williams, who they slide in, gets 8 carries and a target. Do you know who led their backfield in snaps?
Amari DiMercato.
43% of the snaps. 37.
He's only a third down guy or a passing downs guy.
Which would be fine, right? But he gets 1 target out of the 4. So that was totally baffling to me that you play 43% of the snaps in a game you're getting blown out, right?
Yeah.
So you want to be the passing down back in a game like that, I would think, right? So you're clearly right. You have to drop him. But he played 43%. So if you're in a super deep league and there's nobody on the waiver wire and you're locked, hold him this week. Maybe he gets, but you're right, he's a drop. But I can't quantify you lead in snaps and you lose in work. Anyway, I had to throw that out there because it was just one of those anomalies that you rarely see.
Well, it's a three-headed monster any way you slice it. It's a bad three-headed monster. I mean, I'm not really trying to add I'm not tripping over myself to get Keontae Ingram on my roster. Don't get me wrong. He would just be the one of the three. Damian Williams is getting up there in years. Dog years wise, he's ancient at the running back position. Ingram is a physical running back. You could see them using him at the goal line if Arizona can even get there. So I honestly, I would prefer Latavius Murray or Kareem Hunt if they're on the wire. I would slide those guys ahead. I know Leonard Fournette was visiting with Buffalo, but it doesn't seem like that connection's going to happen.
Yeah, and the other thing I read with the Fournette report, he's not signing this week, but it sounds like a number of teams are interested. So I think he's picking his spot. There was a line mentioned that he is supposedly in good shape now. So as you're mentioning, maybe a speculative ad if he's out there, because we all need running backs. And at some point, if he does land somewhere, he could become relevant. So great call on that. How about wide receiver? Who you got for us?
I've got one name. I'm really not excited about the position this week on the waiver wire. It's really all about the running backs. There are a number of guys we just touched on that you could add to your roster for numerous reasons, but Wan'Dale Robinson does deserve some attention here. This is 3 straight weeks with at least 5 catches. The Giants need some sign of life from the wide receivers on this team. He's converting third downs for a team that really struggles to do that. So I would slide Wan'Dale Robinson to the top of the list. I don't know about you, Jim. I am not buying this Kendrick Bourne stock. I know he had another big game, his first since the first week of the season. I just want no part of this Patriots passing attack. I'm never going to feel comfortable putting this guy in my starting lineup. We've seen how hot and cold he can be.
The sad thing is this. The Patriots know Kendrick Bourne is their best option in the passing game. What does that tell you?
No doubt.
That tells you everything you need to know. He is like a number 4 or a number 5 on an NFL roster, but he's the best receiver on their team. They are praying they get something out of Tyquan Thornton, who just got back. The 2 youngsters, Demario Douglas, Kayshon Boutte, they're hoping eventually to get something out of them. But for right now, you're right. It's in shambles. Look, Bourne is going to get some targets every week. I don't know how many that is, but he gets at least 5 in most of the games. If you're desperate, but like Brandon said, the week you start him, you're probably getting a 2 for 8. But if you're desperate, you're desperate. How about tight end?
Now, this is a position I'm pretty excited about. It's time that we start believing. We've been joking about this guy the last couple of weeks. First of all, great to see Kyle Pitts show up on the fantasy radar. So, we've been asked about him numerous times and on this YouTube show, on other hits that we do throughout the course of the week. And so it's just good to see him viable again. But the guy that plays alongside him, Jonnu Smith, is a startable tight end. And even though he's the number 2 for the Falcons, over the last 5 games, he's caught 25 of 32 targets, 282 yards. He had his first touchdown of the season on Sunday. You got to think about the hierarchy of this passing attack. We talked about it with the quarterback position, adding Desmond Ridder. Why? He's throwing the ball more. If you look at the pecking order here, it's Drake London, a clear 1. Kyle Pitts is the clear 2. And then it's a mix of Jonnu Smith and Bijan Robinson tied for 3 in terms of targets in that offense. So he's a guy that I think you can actually rely on if you need a starter at the position. They throw to their tight ends. It's as simple as that. And then Michael Mayer of the Las Vegas Raiders, a guy that had all this preseason buzz and then just flatlined. We're seeing major potential here, a lot of upside. First-round pick for the Raiders. He played 81% of the snaps for the first time this year. Definitely worth a strong look. So really like both of those options if you need a tight end to feel good about that.
Yeah, Michael Mayer has seen his snap share jump in each of the last 3 weeks. Last week, not the one we just played, he was around the 50 range. He went up to 80% of the snaps. So they have fully integrated him in. So, Brandon, you are spot on with this one. If Michael Mayer's out there, he profiled as a chain mover, a possession guy in the middle of the field. But that's what the Raiders need. The Raiders need that. Teams are heavily bracketing Devontae Adams and Jimmy Garoppolo when he's healthy. He doesn't like throwing into tight windows. That's defaulted off to Jacoby Myers. We saw last week that defaulted off to Michael Mayer. So that is how he's going to get his targets. And that area of the field is going to be open for Garoppolo. May miss this week, but whoever their quarterback is, whether it's Hoyer or Aiden O'Connell, Michael Mayer probably is busy. So I love the call on him. And how about a defense special team for this week?
Yeah, we got a question about that when I first popped on. You can certainly add the Raiders this week with the matchup they have against Chicago and their backup quarterback, but I really like the Seattle Seahawks, not just this week, but moving forward. This defense has really started to click the last 2 weeks. Multiple games in a row now where they've allowed less than 170 passing yards, 4 turnovers in the last 2 weeks, 1 defensive touchdown, 14 sacks. Devin Witherspoon is a clear candidate for Defensive Rookie of the Year. He's making a huge difference, and they get the Cardinals in Week 7, so that's the cherry on top. But this is a defense I think you can believe in moving forward. They're legit.
And Brandon, when you talked about those Cardinals running backs and waivers this week, you don't want to do it. Bobby Wagner can't cover in the passing game, but my God, is he a thumper in the running game? They went from being a team that couldn't stop the run last year. They're like top 5 this year. Bobby Wagner can still plug the gap like nobody's business. Before we get out, a couple questions here. Uncle Ted asks, Cole Kmet without Fields or Michael Mayer this week in the same game? Which one do you like for fantasy?
I think I'm going to go with Michael Mayer. Let's back what we saw last week. Even if he's playing with one of his backup quarterbacks, the offense isn't going to change that much. There's more upside there. I do not trust this passing attack of the Chicago Bears without Justin Fields. And let's also attack that terrible Bears defense.
100% with you on that one completely. Nick, this would be a tough one to answer because we don't know who's on your waiver wire, but who to pick up in place of Fields and Christian McCaffrey. That's always a tough question in the vacuum as to who to answer. Always hard, but I don't even know off the top of my head how even to go with that because I think
Desmond Ritter's available in most leagues. It was one of the reasons that I teed him up as my quarterback ad. Everywhere that I look that's not super flex, this guy is readily available. He had a good week a week ago, but nobody was buying into that. Well, now we have a sample size of 2 games where he's played well. Is he doing that at home? Sure. But if they're going to throw the ball as much as they have, that's the reason that I like Desmond Ridder. The guys on the outside, it's not like we disliked Drake London and the other passing options. It's that we disliked the lack of volume. Well, now the volume is there, and he's the one that's delivering. Plus, he's got legs if he needs them. So I would say Desmond Ridder. And then in terms of CMC, I would add one of those 49ers running backs. That way you don't really have to deal with the headache of Monday Night Football.
Perfect.
So if you've got the space, add both. Chances are you got to pick between Eli Mitchell and Jordan Mason. I would pick up Eli Mitchell. Hopefully nobody touches Jordan Mason. And then if you really need to on Monday night and you get a report that says Mason's going to get the lion's share of the carries, go ahead and swap them out on the waiver wire. But it should be Elijah Mitchell. He's the more talented of the two.
And then I looked at the Week 7 schedule quickly. Also at quarterback, if you don't like Ridder, go back to Baker Mayfield. Mayfield had a tough match. Detroit is like literally a top 5 defense right now. They just couldn't get it done. They're playing Atlanta this week. Atlanta's good on defense, but not Mike Evans and Chris Godwin good. That in the play action they run, that's going to keep their pass rush at bay a bit. Mayfield at home is going to bounce back, so that's another option if you don't like Ridder, but Ridder's a great call as well. And then finally, last one, Admiral. You want to know Washington, the defense special teams at the Giants, even if Daniel Jones plays, or the Raiders against the Bears. Who do you think on that one, Brandon?
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with the Raiders. I really think they could rack up. You mentioned that Max Crosby wrinkle to all of this. He gets after everybody. I mean, he wreaks havoc in the backfield. You do that to a rookie quarterback, he's just not going to have a chance to really get into a groove in this game. The Raiders, the perfect streamer, because you're never going to want to start them again. But this week, it is a golden opportunity.
It is. I would agree with that. The Raiders, surprisingly, we know they don't have names aside from Crosby on their defense. They have really played well this year. Their run defense is adequate. Their pass defense somehow has been a little better than adequate. I did not see it coming with their personnel. And we're already through 6 weeks here. And so it's not like a 2-week sample. It's not a big sample, but the Raiders are better than we thought. And
I would push back on that a little bit, though. You look at the quarterbacks they've gone up against. Mac Jones, Jordan Love after the bloom was off the rose, Kenny Pickett, and
true.
Russell Wilson. That's going to help bolster some of these numbers. I'm not totally buying it, but you're right. It's a nameless defense that has been playing well.
I thought they wouldn't be able to stop anybody this year, Brandon. I thought it would be like no matter who they played, they were giving up 30 points.
Well, they do have bad quarterbacks still coming up on their schedule, too. They got one this week. They play both New York teams coming up in the next few. So maybe you're onto something with the Raiders. Long-term appeal for the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, if they're playing the Chiefs, I don't think so. Not so much. Brandon, tell everybody where they can find you and your work.
At Brandon Kravitz, you can follow me across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok. Love to answer your questions. Constant content being pushed out there. And you can catch me on the Fantasy Bites podcast right here on the RotoWire Podcast Network. I drop an episode every single day of the week. 5 minutes, everything you need to know. Boom, boom, boom. Get you in and out and on with your day.
For Brandon Kravitz, I'm Jim Coventry. You catch Brandon here every Tuesday. Everybody, I'll be back on Friday. Have a great day and